logistics is not meant for the faint-hearted. It's not meant for the faint-hearted. It's not one of those things which you can sit back at your office and then be a part of logistics. There used to be a point in time wherein we used to wait for things for days together. Now it has become one day. Now it has become a couple of hours. And most importantly, it's going to become an industry wherein people would want to work for. Glamour had always been missing from logistics. And I think in the next 10 years, glamour definitely is going to come into it. Right now, especially after COVID, I think everybody has understood the importance of logistics. You have seen a lot of things happening even at the government level and a lot of positive things happening. EV is the future for logistics in the coming next 10 years for sure.
Good day everyone, this is Maxson Lewis and welcome to another episode of Max on Mobility. And today on the hot seat, we have Malay Shankar, someone who has close to or more than 2 decades of experience in the mobility space. And Malay, welcome to the hot seat on Max on Mobility. So let's start off with a general question. Malay, people would want to know, why do you think you are one of the best persons to speak on mobility? What's your experience like in this space?
Okay, I must tell you, Max, that while people may think that I am the best person to speak on mobility, I think that comes primarily from the perspective that having spent almost 20 odd years in this sector, having seen it from very nascent stage, obviously there are a lot of experiences which I carry, but that doesn't make me the best, by the way.
Okay.
Right. Thank you so much for inviting me over, Max. I really love being over here. And just a word of caution, please ask all good questions. The questions which I can answer. That's it.
No, it will be good from an audience perspective. I would put it that way. For the reason why is, and like we were discussing, right? The intention of a conversation like this, which I feel is, there's a lot less recognition to mobility space, be it the people who operate mobility, be it the drivers in question, and they don't get that sense of recognition. There's no platform in which it gets discussed in the right way, which brings me to the first question for the day. So and I'm going to put you on the spot here. You've come with so much experience in this space. So there's a lot of kind of unrest in the mobility space, logistics space right now, especially in India. Your take on the news that's happening over the last couple of days, the unrest in this industry. So your take on it.
Thanks, Max. And I think that's a pretty straightforward question. But before I come and answer to that specific query, I must tell you, I think you just now mentioned something that, that recognition is not there. See, what typically happens is that logistics as a sector itself started getting recognized few years back, right? So I still remember in many of those discussions, people have also asked that, is logistics being discussed at the board level, correct? Has it become a board topic or no? So I think it's just last couple of years where it has started getting, logistics as a sector in itself, and I'm not coming to mobility per se right now, but the entire logistics as a sector, especially in India, has started gaining a lot of recognition just starting few years back. It of course is getting discussed quite a lot in the boardroom as well, the overall part of it. And that's a very great and heartening news. Why I say so is because unless and until you form a sector, you form an industry, unless and until it gets discussed, the recognition will never ever come, correct? And now coming specific to mobility, I think what has happened over a period of years is that unlike in anywhere across, say, in the other parts of the world, these jobs over here have always been looked down upon, correct? I think, some time back, I was part of one of the panel and they mentioned that somebody asked an intriguing question. Does the son of a driver or does the driver ever want his son to become a driver?
Oh, brilliant question.
Correct. So there will always be a scarcity. So they're always on the move. The working conditions are not that great. And on top of that, I think, we all have from the corporate sector or the companies in the logistics sector, we also have not been able to do enough so far. But I think as the things are moving across, more and more we are realizing, and there are not many companies again who have started working onto this to take care of these drivers and people who are associated with this mobility sector, and that's the one which will take it forward. Now coming specific to the truckers, I think unrest right now. To be candid enough, I think there will always be some amount of resistance whenever there are rules and regulations which comes across which favors the overall scheme of things, correct? I think the truckers agitation, if you read it, it also starts with the new law which has been passed, and that's the one which is there. But I think more than they're resisting the change, possibly the explanation of that has not been that adequate enough.
Right.
So if they're educated, if they are kind of told as to what it means for them, I think that resistance won't be there. So, and it is in their betterment itself. It's in the betterment of everyone. So I think it's a momentary thing. The moment when they get educated about that, when the things are explained to them, things are going to fall in place.
Great. I mean, that's a very nice way of giving a perspective to what's really happening. Now, let's go back in time.
Sure.
And tell us through your journey. And I know that you've been working with so many eminent companies in this space. So tell us about your journey through a couple of these companies, whichever way you think, and how you started. Because I think you're from IIT Dhanbad, right?
Yeah.
And you did your mining engineering?
Yes.
So for an engineer into mining space to getting into this space of logistics/mobility, so tell us about your journey.
I think I will start with the professional part because once when I started my professional journey, I started with companies like General Binding Corporation, GBC, or a Canon, and these companies were product companies. So Canon, obviously everybody knows what they manufacture, and from there on I moved on to a very different field, which is medical equipments, which is a company called Boston Scientific, and they are into stents and balloons, and so I would have attended thousands of angioplasties and so on and so forth. But I think the trials with destiny of logistics started pretty soon, and that was with DHL. So, and that was DHL Express. Obviously, if somebody gets a chance to start his journey in logistics, overall logistics, it can't be better than, starting with the biggies of the world, right? So
Right.
DHL, FedEx, UPS. And I was very lucky enough to have got a chance to work with DHL Express, followed with FedEx Express. And thereafter, I think, I moved with the Tata Group. And with the house of the Tata, there was a company called Drive India. And the name also was very, very exciting. And which covered the larger piece of logistics. It was not related just to that express part of the logistics. So if I get to explain this entire chain of this logistics, apart from inbound, in-plant and outbound, I think even from the types of services which are offered, there are various kinds of companies, right? You have got these express companies which deliver things in a very time-bound manner, whether domestic or across the globe. You've got these freight forwarding companies, wherein the things move through sea and or air, whatever it is. Third is what we call it the 3PL set of companies. And so these are a set of companies which are very asset light, and then they lease things from various sources, and then they manage this entire. So if a TV or a fridge reaches the house of Max, I think there's a big role which the 3PL companies will play over there.
Right.
So yes, I must say that I was lucky enough to have worked with a typical express company, and then moved on to obviously DHL and FedEx. Then the larger piece of that 3PL, that entire ecosystem. I also got a chance to work with DTDC, and in DTDC I was the chief operating officer over there, taking care of operations as well as sales and stuff like that. But that's a company which taught me the meaning of scale. That's a company which deals with almost 1 million shipment a day. And if the shipment remains in your network for 5 days, is 5 billion shipment.
Right.
Correct. And obviously, my immediately this current previous stint was with ProConnect Supply Chain, which is a Reddington Group company. And it's again into that space of 3PL. So yes, I'm so blessed. I will say that, I got a chance to work with different elements of this logistics, whether that's express, international, domestic, freight forwarding, or even the larger piece of 3PL.
And over these 2 decades, what are the few inflection points, if I were to call it, or let's call it some interesting aspects that you think are important from an India perspective or global logistics perspective, which have happened over the last 2 decades? You want to call them out?
Oh yeah, sure. I think, in logistics earlier, it was not so much of consumer driven. So one of the biggest inflection point I would say is that with the advent of e-commerce, everybody started focusing on the consumer. So the entire logistics thing was getting designed from what is Max going to feel about it.
Brilliant.
Is Max going to get delighted by the way he is getting his shipments?
No.
So this is a big one. So with the advent of e-commerce, this entire focus on the consumer, it never used to exist. Second, I would say is this entire digitization thing. So that's big. So today the companies will find it very, very difficult to continue for a very long period of time if they do not go the digitized way. Third inflection point has always been the technology. And if you really ask me, I say that while we talk about technology, while we can talk about digitization, while we'll talk about e-commerce, I think my biggest point on this would be that this entire startup ecosystem.
Brilliant.
Had these startup ecosystems not come in, we would still have been looking at logistics the very own traditional way, correct? Whereas the moment when these startups came in, and there are big time companies like that of you, who have completely disrupted the market. They disrupted the market by first of all focusing on the consumer, right? By ensuring that there is a technology to take care of it. So in short, if I have to say what are those inflection points, I'll say that advent of e-commerce, focus on consumers, a great focus on technology, and I think digitization and the other stuffs are yet coming.
And this is a nice segue to one of the articles I was reading about. You recently wrote in CEO Insights, right? You were talking about logistics industry's latest trends. So having seen from a past of the last 2 decades, you talked about the new trend. So what are your typical forecasts, if I were to say, and it's a good time, it's just we're starting off with a new year. So what would be your forecast for the next decade or so and for this 2024? What do you want to take some punts out there?
Yeah, I think, it's so very easy to forecast for the next 10 years because you're not there to, sustain that and, be around, justify that. But that was on a lighter note. But I think, I must tell you, Max, that the time for logistics industry has come now. All this while we had been, trying to kind of do things better way, more efficiently, so on and so forth, correct? But the traditional way. Why I say that now the time has come in? Because with the advent of the kind of technology which has started coming in, so just imagine, and I will give you an example. Within a warehouse, if you have to count the inventory, the entire warehouse had to be shut down for a period of 2 to 3 days, depending upon the number of SKUs and the amount of inventory. Now there are methodologies with the help of drone. I think that the entire inventory counting happens within period of hours. But yes, that's expensive. That's something which is, not everybody is utilizing that because the entire ecosystem also needs to be that way. Robotics. So a lot of things are going to happen from an robotics perspective. A lot of things which are going to happen from the new age technologies which are coming in. And most importantly, it's going to become an industry wherein people would want to work for. Glamour had always been missing from logistics. And I think in the next 10 years, glamour definitely is going to come into
I
this.
want you to repeat this. I want you to look at the camera and repeat this. So this point is going to be interesting. Glamour, the glamour bit. You may want to take a cut, but this.
Yeah, so I think, while the technology, all of those things are definitely, going to become far much more important, and there is an early adoption of that happening. Because there is so much of technology and all of those things are happening, I think the biggest forecast from my side would be that, glamour is going to come into this industry for sure. So this industry, which never ever used to attract talent, is going to become a hotbed of talent. And I think, that's the biggest thing which is going to happen.
Thanks for that. And now that's another interesting conversation I've always been happening. I have been having is while this has been a core to any country, the GDP of a country depends upon the amount of goods that is moved and effectively then logistics. What are some of the things? I somehow feel that India as a place has never been able to take off in that space. Like you said, it's still a prediction. It will become glamorous. Why don't you think it is glamorous already? We have tech, a lot of things happening. Something as basic as this has never caught the attention of the smart ones, or if that's a wrong word to say, but the glamour part of it was missing. Why do you think?
I think it's pretty simple. I think, if you look at whenever the budget gets passed, it will get passed for different industries as well. So there will be a reference to the industries. Just look back and think, in any of the budget, when was that the logistics as an industry was addressed, right? So something which is not getting addressed, how is it going to attract the glamour part of it? That is one. Second, logistics is not meant for the faint-hearted. It's not meant for the faint-hearted. It's not one of those things which you can sit back at your office and then be a part of logistics. So the moment when you want to be a part of logistics, you have to be hands-on. You have to hit the ground. And obviously, hitting the ground is very, very different. Being hands-on is very, very different. Being part of those warehouses and on the road is very different, correct? So that's another part of it. Third, I think in logistics as an industry was never ever well paying, right? So the glamour always happens, or things always, it will attract the best of the talent whenever it's well paying. But you know what, Max? Right now, especially after COVID, I think everybody has understood the importance of logistics. And even and I must add this, even from a pay package perspective, it has become pretty much lucrative. Right. So it was the pay package. Then the second part was that, it was not recognized industry. The third part, are there any schools? I mean, today you go get into any engineering college, you will have computers, you will have mechanical engineering, you will have something else. But logistics has never ever been taught as well.
In fact, that's a very interesting point, because when I was doing my MBA, I did my MBA from NITI, which is now IIM Mumbai, which is known for operations and logistics. And that was one of the only colleges.
Yes.
It's very rare. Right? Great point that you made about the budget. I want to take you on that one. Is that this is a problem. The recognition comes all the way from the top, or the lack of recognition. Are you part of any organization or any group of people who are trying to make an impact in that space? You have any points of view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with the new government being in place, or I think over a period of last 5 to 8 years, you have seen a lot of things happening even at the government level, and a lot of positive things happening.
Okay.
I think, in December 2023, just a few days back, that lead report of India came out, Lead yes. 2023 came out. And I was amazed to see that report that, every state has been kind of, mentioned over there. How does it look like? How does the index number look like for that? So I think even from the government side, there's so much of focus. Now this Gati Shakti and all of these plans having come in. It's just that, things have started progressing well. Now, at the same time, having said so, even this private company, when I say private companies, I think all these organizations like CII and all, yes, I have been a part of that, many of those discussions. I think they are doing a fantastic job, because there has to be a representation to the government that, this is what is plaguing us, this is how we would want the things to happen. And nothing, changes overnight, right? But there's a lot of, discussions between the private parties as well as the government which is happening. And I think the government has been extremely progressive and they are taking beautiful inputs. So all of these plans and policies whichever are coming in, it's not happening one-sided. There is a humongous amount of inputs which is going across, and they are readily not only accepting but also deliberating upon that. That's a big shift.
And this brings me to one question. As Malay, who's having so much experience in this space, if there's that one or two asks to the government of India for its incoming budget, what would those couple of things would be? What would be a couple of asks that you may have?
I think, Max, I always believe in one thing, that execution is the key. So the government has already rolled out lot many policies. My only ask would be that, design things around those policies so that it just starts getting executed. See, we will never ever reach a perfect stage. But unless until we execute, we'll not even come to know what is there on the way which will make us stumble. So I always believe that, there are a lot of these policies which have been rolled out, including things on warehousing and stuff like that. It just needs to be implemented. And coming across, I think in logistics, and I'll just refer back to the previous question which you had asked, Max, that, in terms of the forecast, I must tell you that there are two, apart from that glamour part which I mentioned, two very important things which are going to come across. Is one on the overall sustainability part of it, because it's no longer a question of whether you want or you don't want. And companies like that of yours, which have started playing a major role in terms of EV. EV is the future for logistics in the coming next 10 years for sure. That's how it is going to happen.
So Malay, those are very interesting points that you talked about, and we'll just try to peel the onion, as they say. First thing is, there's a little bit of confusion about a lot of these new jargons, or for people who are not part of this space. What is logistics? What is mobility? What is supply chain? And there's this new concept of dark stores. You want to just tell, let's say, for a layman who's outside this industry, what is it that he should understand from these terminologies? Do you want to take a shot at it? I know it's going to be very basic for you, but let's still try and make it easier for people who need to understand the logistics space.
Sure. Thank you, Max, for that. But as you always say, that if you need to explain something in an easy way, that is the most difficult thing, right? Then you are unable to confuse the people around. But just to put the things into perspective, supply chain is the largest set, right? So supply chain will constitute of right from sourcing, planning, then this entire logistics part of it, or the movement part of it, storage part of it, and then till such time it reaches the end customer or the end consumer. So this entire stuff is what we call it as a supply chain part of it. It also involves the sourcing, correct? Whether that is of the raw material, whatever. Logistics is the smaller part of that set, which talks more about the transportation piece of it, whether you do it by air, whether you do it by road, whether you do it by whichever means, correct? So that is a smaller part of that. And now the moment when you also mentioned about these dark stores, I think dark stores are nothing but warehouses which are very small in size and situated within the city. Say a company like, so we all are used to ordering things on Swiggy or that Zomato.
Blinkit, all of those.
Yeah, all these companies, that, please send across toothpaste, please send across this and that. And they promise whatever period of time, it's a very short period of time. What typically happens is that you can't service all of those requirements from a central warehouse or a state warehouse or a city warehouse. Hence, all those requirements are serviced from small, when I say small warehouses, these are small inventory carrying locations, which can be your next door. It can be a simple flat. It can be a small shop next door, correct? Wherein all of these things are kept together and they generally serve a radius of 2 to 5 kilometers at the maximum. So it's like this. If somebody promises 15 minutes of delivery, you can very well imagine that in 15 minutes, how much of distance a biker can carry. Minus that for 3-4 minutes to process that order. So within 10 minutes, how much is the longest distance somebody can carry? So a catchment area is serviced from those small locations, which is called as a dark store. It's as simple as that.
So can I put it in simple words? Are you saying that earlier logistics required warehousing was slightly far away from the consumer? So are you saying these warehouses sizes are getting smaller and closer to the consumer? Is that what is happening?
Absolutely, yes. I think, that's not what is happening, that, warehouses are coming nearer to you. We are becoming impatient. We are becoming so impatient to, have those, either those fruits or those groceries, or, and whether, even for these consumer durable stuff, because we are becoming impatient, and there is so much focus on consumers these days by a lot of company, because, if I reach out to Max and Max is unable to deliver something to me in the next 15 minutes time, I'll go to somebody else. So the companies are vying to ensure that, they deliver delight to their consumers. Because they are doing that, they don't have a choice but to start coming nearer and nearer to the consumers.
So then how near is near enough?
I think at the end of the day, the financials will start playing a major role. I'm saying my wish can be that, something should be next door, but the companies are meant to stay there for a long period of time. They can't keep on bleeding, correct? So obviously, how near is something is my tolerance limit. And I think, there used to be a point in time wherein we used to wait for things for days together. Now it has become one day, now it has become a couple of hours. I think the right answer, Max, is simply something has to be sustainable. It has to be viable from a business perspective.
Absolutely.
Because then it is there for a longer period of time. The shorter period of time, I'm saying, wishes can be anything.
Right.
But for the longer period of time, this to remain sustainable and all, I think.
Great. So you made a very interesting point about how, when I asked you about how near, it has to be near enough so that it is also sustainable. And that's one of the things that I wanted to pick up on. What do you think is the kind of investments that are happening in the logistics mobility space? Because I think the buzzword these days is about investments, startups, investment. You also talked about it, that exciting space. Is enough investment coming into this space? And if it is, which are the spaces one should look out for? And this is probably to the so-called the entrepreneurs to be. You may want to address this too.
I think there are two ways I would want to answer this query, Max. Investments are always coming for the great ideas, the ideas which are trying to solve the problem of the society. I think, there is no dearth of investment out over there. Having said so, are these investments good enough? I think these investments are mind-blowing. If you look at some of those numbers which keeps on floating around, Indian entrepreneurs, these are the moments for the entrepreneurs, in fact. There's a lot of investment which is coming across. However, having said so, is that investment enough? I'll flip the question the other way around and say that, there's always enough amount of investments as long as your business ideas are sustainable in nature, as long as they start repaying back. But there will not be enough amount of investment if it doesn't become business-wise viable.
Sure.
So for all the viable businesses, there are enough amount of investments coming in. And my take on this would be that the investments are definitely happening in the new age technologies. Investments are quite a lot happening in EV sector, because that's the future, by the way. And I'm pretty much sure that a lot of investments is also happening in the logistics sector, because that's coming of the age. People always say that logistics as a sector is a sunshine industry. That means the sun is definitely going to shine on your back, and you are going to feel that burnout over there, right? So I think all these investments are on the way, and I personally believe, because I keep on speaking and interacting with many people, there is always an investment available for all the great and the viable ideas, which is going to sort out a lot of challenges which we as a society face.
And since you talked about EV now, this is going to be interesting, and this is of personal interest to me and many others of our viewers. logistics has always been blamed for adding and being the least, the slowest towards adopting clean ideas, be it the way it operates, etc. EVS is seen as the sector or an idea which kind of changes that perception. What's your take on EV in general from a logistics perspective, very high level? And then what do you think are the challenges towards adopting of clean mobility in the logistics space? What are some of the things that you have to say?
Sure. I think it's a very important question, Max, and thanks for asking that. See, EV has made its mark as far as understanding the entire concept is concerned. I think there is no doubt about that. This is definitely going to be the future. But when we say that, logistics has been the one which has been kind of adopted to it pretty late, or they are still in the process of doing that, there are multiple reasons for that. One of the reasons is that if you look at how the entire logistics industry works, or these companies they work on something called as a lease model. They are an asset-light model, right? They never ever go ahead and purchase vehicles and then they run it, correct? Now, the question is that are there enough amount of EV vehicles available in the market as much as the other fuel vehicles which are available? So they are in millions and billions, and here you are in thousands, correct? So obviously, they find it extremely difficult to go across and lease it out from the market. So availability in itself is a big issue. Or it's a challenge rather, I say, which is going to get better and better. The second part is that this entire ecosystem of this charging and stuff like that happening, because let me give an analogy. Today, if somebody is running across a vehicle on a fuel like a petrol or a diesel, the pit stop for him to get it fueled up again is hardly less than a few minutes. So somebody goes, parks it at the fuel station, the fuel gets done, and you're out, correct? But the moment when it comes down to across to EV, they do not have enough of these pit stops where they can just go and plug it and then just charge it a bit or whatever they need to do, and then go out and do those deliveries again. So there is always a fear at the back of the mind running, especially the people who drive those vehicles. Is it enough charge? Will it cover all my that 50 kilometers, 80 kilometers? I'm saying, imagine that's not something which you undergo as a challenge when you are driving any other vehicle. That doesn't mean that EV is not supported, correct? It's a question of mindset that, every time before I start the vehicle, let me check it out whether it will cover my distance or not, correct? So it can be tackled in various ways wherein, company like that of yours, like Magenta Mobility, is doing enough and more to, address quite a lot of that. The third part is, if you look at the bulk of the deliveries which happens, the bulk of the deliveries will always happen which are large quantities. And in the EV sector, especially the logistics sector, which the kind of trucks and the vehicles which they deploy are way far beyond those two-wheelers and the three-wheelers, correct? That's where the maximum load happens. And there's not enough and more which is available in that sector, because that's the one which, kind of feeds it, right?
Right.
And the fourth, I will definitely say that, as logistics companies, we also have not done enough. We have not looked at it from a perspective that we need to make it a grand success. Because some of our customers are asking, because somebody else has asked, chalo, we'll do that. Yes, there are responsible companies. I'm not saying that, companies are not responsible. There are responsible companies who are looking at the future and then deploying it right away, correct?
Right.
So I think these are a combination which, Max, I believe.
Which brings me to, for a person who's done this for years, does the unit economics of transitioning to clean mobility stack up? Purely from a logistics person, not from a company which, let's say, would you ever want to set up a company, a logistics company? Would you pick up EV or existing vehicles, or wait for hydrogen? What would you do?
I'll straight ahead go and pick up EV.
Okay, why would you say that?
Because the unit economics definitely helps you out. If you just keep away that the initial cost of procurement, I think the cost of running is amazingly great. And you won't be able to get that kind of unit economics anywhere else. I'm saying from a per kilometer basis, correct?
Right.
But there's an interesting fact around this. The moment when you get to per kg basis, it starts becoming challenging. When I say per kg basis, it's because in a normal vehicle, I can have 1 ton, 2 ton, 5 ton going across.
Right.
For that amount of money, correct? Now, since those vehicles are not available right now, which can carry my 5 tons, 3 tons, 4 tons, or 2 tons, and so at the maximum, what I get to see is that, less than a ton is something which is moving across right now. So, there is a difference between per kilometer rate versus per kg rate. And as logisticians or as logistics companies, we tend to monitor both.
Malay, this is an interesting point from a logistician that you spoke about, and if you want to address the EV OEMs, what is it that one thing that you want to push down their minds and thought process in terms of how they are looking at EV adoption in the logistics space? Any points of view?
Sure. So I think, Max, what typically happens in the logistics is that there is something called, what we call it as an inbound, and then middle mile, and then the last mile part of it, correct? Quite a large part of the movement or the in terms of quantity, it happens between that inbound and the first mile and the middle mile, correct? My only request would be, and suggestion would be that for a larger adoption of EV, and from a logistics perspective, we should go beyond the last mile part of it. So we are so much focused on just the last mile, and last mile anyway, EV in terms of manufacturing or having the vehicles in place, they already have it now, correct? It's a question of how does it proliferate more. But the solution is already there. There are 2-wheelers, there are 3-wheelers already available out over there. But logistics is far much more larger than that. You have the first mile, you have the middle mile, you have the last mile, and we all are concentrating right now on the last mile part of it. I think the true adoption from logistics companies will start happening when you start sorting out their major challenges of the middle mile and the first mile as well. Correct? So the more you shift towards that, all of a sudden you will feel that, there's a lot happening out over there.
I would like to reiterate this point that you made is there's too much focus of the EV industry on the last mile.
Yeah.
And there's a bigger play out there, and this brings out there in the first mile, mid mile. And this brings me to an interesting discussion we were having is the larger value of goods transported lies in the B2B segment and not the B2C segment.
Absolutely.
And this many times gets hidden under the glamour of the B2C world, right?
Yeah.
That we talked about. So from a B2B perspective, I think a couple of points I think needs discussion, and be it EV or non-EV.
Yeah.
One was the fact that you positioned about the vehicles to be there in the, but there's just one point on the sustainability space in the first mile, mid mile. Other than the fact that EV, are there any other sustainability based efforts in the B2B segment in first mile, mid mile that's happening?
Honestly, as we speak on this particular day, I think, we have got miles to go before we even say that we have started making an effort or an attempt on the first mile and the middle mile part of it. Because there has to be a solution as well available, correct? In logistics and that too in transportation part of it. If the solutions are available, I think the companies are absolutely willing to, go about and doing that. But what is definitely happening in the first mile and the middle mile part of it, while this is a transportation term, the storage of the goods definitely has started taking place in a much more sustainable fashion.
Okay.
So the warehouses which are designed, which are more eco-friendly, they kind of, are powered by the solar energy. Quite a lot of those things are definitely, happening out over there. So that part, storage part is being taken care of, but the transportation part is something wherein the solution needs to be available for people to, even adopt.
So for a logistician, I give it to you that, okay, you can transfer the responsibility of sustainability, the logistics piece, to the EV OEMs because the product doesn't exist, but the other aspects here. But there is one aspect I think the responsibility lies on the logisticians itself, is the accountability part. What do you have to say about it? Because that is seen as one place where losses, pilferages, etc. Any solution, anything that's happening out of the box in that space, and as a logistician, what would you say?
I think, Max, if I reflect back upon last 20 years of my journey into the overall logistics and supply chain industry, I'll say that we have come a very, very long way. There are moments when you talk about pilferages and shortages and stuff like that. I think what definitely has happened, especially in the B2B segment, is that there are so many of these solutions now which are tech solutions which are now available, which just helps us protect the kind of material what we are carrying. And if I have to quote an example, in some of my previous organizations wherein I have worked for, we have been carrying iPhones. We have been carrying very high value items, that too in bulk, and not even a single misplacement has ever happened. And that also happens because not only through those security measures, but also the way this entire tech piece has got integrated, right? Mm-hmm. So even the companies like, and I must say the name of Apple and all, or some of those very forward-looking organizations, they have integrated big time with the 3PL or the logistics companies. And the moment when they have got themselves integrated, there is a whole dashboard which is available wherein I am able to not only track that from a movement perspective, but also from a security angle perspective.
Which brings me, this is an interesting point. We talked about sustainability, we talked about accountability, we're talking about integration. And I see a huge amount of integration. We were talking about the number of notifications you receive before you receive a package delivered to your home.
Yeah.
5 or 10 or whatever.
Correct.
You get it at every point.
Correct.
That's not so much of that is happening on the B2B side. Am I right to say that, or you think I am a bit taking a very conservative view of the technology integration in the B2B space?
I must say that you're very kind enough in saying that there is very little happening. Actually, there is hardly anything which has happened, and that's primarily also because I think in a 3PL industry, while we believe that it's an outsourced industry where you outsource your operations to someone else, I think at the back of the mind, what you tend to also outsource is all your worries and challenges to them. It's not only operations, correct? So you're also transferring and outsourcing your risks also to the 3PL industry, correct? Now, typically what happens is, if the companies start coming forward and start integrating their ERP with the WMS and the TMS of the 3PL companies, I think it will start working wonders, and that's where the entire integration needs to happen. There are quite a good number of companies which have come forward. They have kind of done those technology layers when even the WMS team has now started becoming integrated. So the WMS is integrated, your TMS is now integrated, which is that last mile part of it. And here are the ERPs of the companies. If all these three start getting integrated, I think it's going to be wonderful. And I must tell you that this integration of the ERP of the customers with the 3PL companies, that's in a very, very nascent stage.
Why is it not happening? Why do you think it is not happening? Is it because the logisticians don't want it, or somewhere else?
No, logisticians would love to have that, because that brings in a lot of efficiency. It brings in a lot of speed at which they are able to do that. I think one of the biggest reasons is, in my personal opinion, is the ERP of the organizations, they carry a lot of sensitive data.
Right.
It carries a lot of data which they feel, if integrated with something else, which is core to their business, it may get compromised. I think it's also the owners of the logistics companies to go and prove back to these organizations, saying, here it is, these are the kind of encryption and safety mechanisms, firewalls are there, and we'll pick up only those data points which is required for me to work as a logistics company, and not that I'm interested in any other data.
Malay, you raised a very interesting point, and which also brings me to the next segment we are talking about, is what's new for the people who want to get invested in this space. And I'm talking about the startups, entrepreneurs, the new age people, the glamour quotient when it has to come in. You raised an important point about the integration. So my question to you largely is, for those who intend to get into the mobility space, to get into the logistics space, young blood or glamour, what do you think that some of the areas that they can start to address, work? Any points and thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, there are two, three of them, and those are the ideas which even I personally I'm trying to find out a solution to that, because that's really going to be helpful. But I must tell to the audience out over there, any idea which solves the overall problem is something works the best, right? Because there will be a lot many takers. So right now in the logistics mobility in that space, there are still a lot many problems which are yet not solved for. What has been solved for are the B2C challenges. What is not solved for is B2B challenges. So if there are young entrepreneurs who are willing to take that leap of faith into the B2B segment, is very much welcome. Because B2B actually, if B2C, this integration and the tech is over here, B2B is still over here.
Got it.
So there is so much of gap to be filled in. And just as an example, and this is something which incidentally I was telling to my son as well, that he is pursuing his computer engineering. I said that I'll give you a problem, you sort it out for me from a tech perspective. And it is as simple as, today we have got a lot of WMS, and I'm just giving one example, Max. The one WMS cannot function, and it cannot kind of get customized for the requirements of my different companies with whom I deal with.
Right.
Because say an FMCG company behaves very differently in terms of the ERP and the processes. A pharma company behaves very, very differently. Then another FMCG company behaves very differently. But I have got only one WMS, correct? Now this WMS has to cater to the requirements of the FMCG, retail, and all of that, correct? Now just imagine, within FMCG as well, a Samsung process will be very different from a Sony process. A Sony process will be very different from a Whirlpool process. So just look at this, that one WMS, it cannot be customized to its level of inefficiency. Right? So there is a challenge at hand, and that's a B2B challenge I'm talking about. How is it that some of these young entrepreneurs come forward and help us, close that gap? So the moment when it happens, there's a lot of integration which happens, correct?
So Malay, I want to put you on the spot again over here. Is there are entrepreneurs who are wanting to get into this space. There's a lack of guidance. There's a lack of glamour, if I were to put it. And what you brought today is both of them. A sense of understanding. Would you be open to entrepreneurs reaching out to you and working with you in this space and trying to make logistics and mobility a slightly more better place for people to engage with? You're open to that?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, Max. And I have got a lot of respect for the entrepreneurs for 2-3 reasons. One is they have never ever faced something called what is impossible, right? So since they have not seen, when I say entrepreneurs, especially the young entrepreneurs, correct? So they attempt at anything from a perspective that is solvable. And yes, it is solvable. It is definitely solvable. So one is that. Second, they are so passionate that if I get a chance and I get a chance to interact with them, I get a lot of learning out of them. The way they look at those problems out of the box, thinking altogether, that helps me also grow. So I'll be more than willing enough to, offer my whatever little bit of understanding I have been able to develop.
So on that, the channel through Maxson Mobility, we'll try and see how we can get you engaged with them.
Sure.
So for those of you who are looking to reach out and talk to a person who understands the space, wants to make it a little bit more interesting for you and come out with ideas jointly, we'll get you connected to Malay. And on that note, Malay, thank you so much. You've really brought an entire full spectrum of the entire logistics space together. And trust me, I wish we could speak on length on this. Sure. This has been an interesting conversation. One thought you want to leave the audience with, if I were to ask that, as an individual who's worked in the space, what would be that one inspiring thought that you want to give it to everyone and anyone who would be interested in understanding this logistics space? One message from your side. And you can look at that camera and give it to me.
Thanks, Max. I personally follow 2 things, and that's what I would want to share with the audience out over there. One is I always follow this motto of whatever it takes. Because if I need to do certain thing, whatever it can be, I just need to do whatever it takes to get to there. And obviously the rightful way. And the second part is, because there are many people who are entrepreneurs and who want to do a startup and all. I think I also follow this funda that never ever give up. The reason being that you don't know how close you were to success. Maybe the last step, whatever you were taking, and the time when you wanted to give that up, the next step was the door of the success.
Right.
So keep trying for it, and unless and until you keep trying for it, it doesn't happen. And it's absolutely cool to fail. I would have committed thousands of mistakes by now, and it's absolutely cool to fail. But fail fast. Don't take time to fail as well.
Like they say in logistics, reach fast.
Fail fast. So I will say that fail fast.
That's a very nice way of putting it. And with that, on that note, Malay, thank you so much. This has been an interesting conversation, and Maxson Mobility is very privileged to have you on the hot seat, as I said, and you really brought so much value to it. On that note, to the audience out there, thanks for watching this episode of Maxson Mobility. And do continue to reach out to us. Like they say, like, share, subscribe to the channel and to more such episodes of such interesting conversations. Till then, this is Maxson Lewis signing off from Max on Mobility. Thank you.